Alright, so I've got, I'll bring up the deck list at the end of this video, but I'm actually going to run through games I had with the previous iteration of the deck and then bring up the current iteration and then talk about what I'm kind of contemplating as far as what changes might be sensible given what's happening in the format. So I believe this starts right here at 8:59. Yes, indeed it does. And this was a nice little 5-0 run. And it's the only time I've only had time to play Magic twice so far. Once on the day when I obtained this win, and once today. So my opponent is playing, I think mono blue, yeah, Jace, and I get first turn Weathered Wayfarer. He gets to float an Ancestral, but my start is so good. That means he's tapped out and he can't stop the Signet. So I'm remember I could have held back to try to develop cards with Wayfarer, but if you have a choice between mana and cards, for most of the early game, the correct answer is develop your mana and then focus on developing your cards later. And again, my opponent he misses a land drop multiple times, so Wayfarer would not have triggered anyway. So if I'd have held off for that play, I would have really paid for it. But I'll get. This deck has so many ways to pick up lands. We're not going to have a problem uh, activating Wayfarer if we really want to, as you'll see very soon. So I go ahead and Chancery at the end of the turn, pick up Confluence just because I'm tired of beating myself up unnecessarily. My opponent digs with Mental Note, digs with Thought Scour. Both of them flip over tons of cards and misses a land drop. So that is a bad string of luck. But then again, he did manage to get through it all. So I guess that's good. Still, huge. All right, so I bash and don't really have much going. I'm going to go ahead and play Bloodstained Mire. Oh, excuse me, since I can Tithe Trick. My opponent Ancestrals, High Tides, Turnabouts, Order of Successions away my Breya. I let it go rather than sacrificing and letting him have Weathered Wayfarer. And I attempt to Anguish Unmaking on his turn, figuring he'd counter given that he had High Tide running in a blue untap, but I don't want him to be able to counter whatever I do on my next turn, and I don't really care. So I go ahead and just kill my Breya and smash for a bit and pass. Opponent's at 14 now, finally plays a land. So, holding control, I sack the Bloodstained Mire, respond with Tithe. This is kind of amazing, by the way. Respond with Tithe. Activate Wayfarer. Brainstorm. Put back 2 lands. Resolve Bloodstained Mire, and just like that, I have drawn 2, 3, 6, 7 cards for the turn if you count my draw step, and put 2 back. Pretty doggone good. So my situation's so much better now. So my opponent tries to Cryptic Command, bouncing my Azorius Chancery and drawing a card. I respond with Notion Thief. I draw a card. He then wastelands one of my Cavernous Souls. So fair enough. I go and send in the team. He goes for a Snapcaster. I attempt to forbid with my back. Opponent tries to Memory Lapse that. I attempt to Daze the Memory Lapse. And apparently Daze resolves, which means Memory Lapse is countered. Forbid resolves, which means Snapcaster is countered. I then will get to play Azorius Chancery and pick up a land, or play Underground Sea and Vindicate a land, depending on what sounded better to me. But I think what I would have done is I probably would have played Chancery and picked up actually, to be honest, I probably would have just picked up the City of Brass and let my opponent know I didn't have a counter here because I have Jeweled Amulet, so he doesn't know for sure. And the reason is that on the next turn, I can activate Scrubland, or use Scrubland to activate Wayfarer and go fetch lands. And from there, I get a draw phase plus a fetch, and I would have had Forbid back in my hand. So I basically get 2 cards per turn off of Weather Wayfarer, and I can Forbid with buyback all day long. So it only takes a few more turns before my opponent's completely knocked out of this game. So I think it was wise to scoop there, or very reasonable at the least. All right, so game 2, I was playing against Jonesy. And Jonesy's running Sidisi. So I mulligan and see a Scroll Rack decide to dump it. And we're going to see what happens. Opponent goes early Sylvan Caryatid. I cannot Swords to Plowshares that. But I anticipate what I'm going to need for this game, and based on that, I go ahead and Mystical Tutor now for a Toxic Deluge. Playing Talisman. Opponent plays Scavenging Ooze. Knows I have Toxic Deluge, of course, so I'm just going to play Jace and bounce his Ooze. He exiles one of my lands or something, doesn't matter. On his turn, he plays Sidician. I drew Palace Jailer, so I draw with Jace's Brainstorm effect. Don't find a second blue source for Force of Will, and make a risky play. And it's risky here because if my opponent has removal, he can attack with the zombie and hit me and take the Monarch, or he can attack and kill Jace. And neither one of those are particularly good. I actually would prefer, if he has removal, that he kills Jace, not hits me and takes the Monarch, because it's much harder for me to take the Monarch back. So he has removal. I don't have a white. I don't have Force of Will. He attacks and kills Jace. I go ahead and sweep the board. Now my opponent's down to 2 cards, and I'm drawing 2 lands rather, and I'm drawing 2 cards per turn. He plays his creature, who I just Swords to Plowshare. I play my commander and draw an extra card. At this point, my opponent he's so pinched for mana, and I mean, I'm drawing 2 cards per turn. I'm a control deck. I've got my commander in play. He's right. It's probably over. Right, so after Jonesy was Chubby Rain, and this was the game that you could see in the opponent's videos section of my channel. And in that section, I play this game from my opponent's perspective. So you'll now be able to see how the game played out from my perspective. So this is my opening hand, and I decide it's got a lot of potential, so I'm going to keep it. And my opponent's playing Thrasios and Vial Smasher. So I'm going to lead off with Verdant because although I could jump out the gates blazing with Signets, I don't really want to sack my city just yet. So I go ahead and play city here and fetch into, I believe, red-black in order to get all of my colors into play. The opponent had played a Grim Flayer, so he's flailing me or flailing over there or doing something grimly. Anyway, on his turn, he uses the Grim Flayer to throw away a Jace, which I thought was incredibly cool, fortunate for me, and then plays Cavern of Souls, which is unfortunate, but runs it into a Vial Smasher. On my turn, I get to clear the board and play a land tax. This is very good. Opponent then follows up with Chandra. This is very bad. Uses Chandra to cast Smuggler's Copter, which I'm kind of ambivalent about. The main thing I don't like about the Copter is my opponent's ability to filter his draws. Alright, so I get to tax up, and we are going for... I'm going to go ahead and kill the city. I impulse first because I was very much hoping that I could find a pickup land, but I do not, so I go ahead and just play a land and Vindicate Chandra off the table. Opponent plays his commander and attacks for 3. Somewhat expected outcome there, and then plays him as Jete. Alright, so no more basics for me to fetch until I put some back into the deck, which, I can, as you know, I can get lands from play, graveyard, deck, and move them all over the board. I can move them from graveyard to play, play to hand, hand to deck, deck back to hand. Just depends on which cards we're talking about. Deck can do all of that. My opponent, so I kill his commander, and my opponent casts Vial Smasher and hits me with Smuggler's Copter, which is exactly what I expected him to do. He discards Brainstorm, which I did not expect. I don't see that too often. And then on my turn, I go ahead and will into Swords, into Verdant Catacombs, and recast my Demonic Tutor. Now, based on how much mana my opponent has and what his commanders cost, I go get Treachery, anticipating that his next turn he's just going to play a commander and attack me with the 3/3, which he does. And by getting Treachery now, I'm going to be able to address his commander, plus it turns into a win condition for me because it draws cards, and I can do it while being completely safe to run out all my counters because it basically costs 0. I drew a very nice lightning bolt there and pass for the turn. Take Treachery as guy and pass for the turn. So I definitely had the right read on this situation. the end of my opponent's turn, I attempt to draw a card or whatever the other ability is. My opponent tries to lightning bolt it, and normally I will not fight over something like that, but I decide I'm going to fight because he's so low on cards. His Mystic Confluence? But the other reason was that it opened the door for Jace. However, I actually drew Ravages of War for the activation of the commander, and that certainly changes the metrics of what I was going to do. How about Ravages Jace? So I plus up Jace in case he does go land commander, and he had a 1-drop elf, Deathrite Shaman, so that's what got tucked. So that was hugely fortunate. Go ahead and play Expedition Map, Daimir Aqueduct, and pass. I can now remand. Evasive action won't do much. In fact, probably nothing. For now. But at the end of my opponent's turn, I'll go ahead and sack Expedition Map, most likely finding a blue-red source or a red-white source, something like that. Probably would have got red-white. I don't know. Doesn't really matter, though. Anyway, at this point, you can see the opponent's video and see what his hand is, but essentially, he misses a land drop again, and he scoops it up. So, very nice game there. And Chubby Rain actually plugged me on when he did his recording, plugged my channel. So, I would like to return the favor. If you're interested in seeing his game or watching him play in general, he's on Twitch. It's Twitch, and his handle is ChubbyRain1. So you can look him up there. So this next game here, I think this is game 4, was against Werepossum. And I've got a certainly solid hand, and I'm playing Vial Smasher Crom. Going first, this hand is pretty acceptable. Going second, it's a dangerous keep. So I run out Felwar Stone. I know I'm taking damage against Vial Smasher somewhat unnecessarily, but I wanted to represent counter magic. My opponent goes ahead and taps out for Legacy's Allure, and with that, we're going to slam Tezzeret and go get ourselves an orb. Pass the turn back. So my opponent's taking up an Allure. We cast Dark Confidant. Okay. So on my turn, I untap Ancient Tomb, and look at that top deck. Mox Opal, are you kidding me? That's phenomenal. So I was thinking about going Treachery here, and ultimately I do end up deciding to roll with that, even though I don't get the full suite of lands to untap. Floating a red there, I actually go ahead and cast Breya now, and what's neat about this is I don't have to worry about days. Bad thing is that I can't evasive action just yet. So my opponent Vampirics and passes. It steals Dark Confidant and then passes. Am I trying to get Anguished Unmaking? That's gross. I don't know. I feel like I might have... I wonder if we're going to bug out. Well, we'll see. Yeah, this is all correct. The Slater series is correct, so I go ahead and get a Wasteland for his Cavern of Souls and pass back. Opponent tries the Lightning Bolt, which gets Force of Willed, because I want to keep Tezzeret alive, because Tezzeret's doing a great job of keeping me alive. Go and smash with Breya again, and play Duretti, collecting up a counter, and I go ahead and exile my opponent's, what was it, Chrome Mox. So in his turn, he gets to Pyroblast Tezzeret, but he's taking quite a beating, and I draw a Daze. So I go ahead and just kill his Nihil Spellbomb before he untaps the black source to draw a card off it. His turn, he's completely out of gas. He has no cards in hand. It's a good time to draw Nate's Whisper. And I play Azorius Chancery and pass. My opponent gets to run out of Dak Faden, just avoiding Daze. It's kind of frustrating, but so be it. And then attempts to steal Breya of all things. So I go ahead and just sack, kill Dak Faden, and start building my mana up for another Breya turn here real soon, while also building up permanents to sack to Breya. Alright, so opponent has 0 cards in hand, so we'll come down with Breya. Opponent's at 4. Opponent's at 1. Opponent is at -2. So, so his earlier play may have been a little bit silly. But at any rate, that down where Possum goes. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, and the last one is against the Jonesy again. You notice Shano, the Jonesy. Yeah, sometimes late at night, like real late at night, it gets very inbred, the matches do, and you get a lot of repetition like that. So not super interesting at that point, but can be alright, I suppose. And for this game, I have to mulligan playing Sidisi again. This is a pretty reasonable start, though, especially, yet again, going first, which I think is pretty important when you have these slower starts. And look, he leads with Scavenging Ooze. And I Jace it back to his hand. This feels like deja vu, almost. So he plays Scavenging Ooze again. So my turn, I play Protection for Jace, and once I know that it's there, I go ahead and zero it up. So now it's unfolding differently. Opponent uses the opportunity to clone my Breya for 2 and then kill Breya, not Jace. So I double block. On my turn, I use Tezzeret to go get Winter Orb in conjunction with Grim Monolith. And then I -1 his my opponent's Phantasmal Image, which kills it. On my turn, I go ahead and Merchant Scroll. Going for, I believe, Gush. And Impulse, my opponent plays a Draga Tree Speaker. I go ahead and just let him smack a counter off one of my guys. Then I Impulse into Swords to Plowshares. I'm now using X's 0 on Tezzeret to go get Moxes, which is never good. I'm planning to Swords his guy. I just wanted him to plus it up, but at this point I realize he may not, so I go ahead and just clear it. Alright, I've got Ancestral Visions floating. It's just way too much. I zero out Tezzeret again. So good. Opponent plays Dryad Arbor. Not a card we want to see too sneaking out the gates like that, but I've got a Snapcaster. And my opponent has some trick he's going to try to pull off, a Mystic Snake. Not going to happen, my friend. Not going to happen. So go ahead and just remand Snappy back to my hand. Recast him. Swords to Plowshares the Snake. And pass for the turn. Well, I put down a few more Artifact mana thanks to Tezzeret's ability, and then pass for the turn. When it goes for Deathrite Shaman, I go ahead and just counter that, pick up a land. I now Ancestraling myself. I've got Jace and Tezzeret running in one more turn. Tezzeret can finish this game out. Go ahead and Demonic Tutor. I just realized I'm actually very tired, and I use it for Armageddon, followed by Tezzeret's ultimate, I believe. Yep. And my opponent can just eat it. So. Oh. I didn't ultimate there. That's weird. Okay, well anyway, as I said, I apologize. I am getting a little bit tired, so I think I will actually break this off and do the second recording tomorrow for these games, and then play some more. And I did say I would bring up the current deck list, but remember, it's not exactly what I played there. However, the current list looks like this. I took out the map and I put Vandal Blast back in just because I wanted to have that effect. And I took out Supreme Verdict and I put Whir in. I never really found myself using Supreme Verdict. Now, something I did try, I also took out City of Traders and I put in Mystic Gate. So I figure it's a couple different things. Mystic Gate is a way to go get double white for Palace Jailer off of Weathered Wayfarer, for example. I actually thought this made more sense with the map in the deck, so I may end up putting the map back in. I was trying out Vandal Blast in the next 5-0. Never once did I need it. As a matter of fact, I think right now the format is such that I will indeed go back to using map. It's very frustrating because Vandal Blast is such a good card, and I really want to use it, but I just don't think. So I think we'll leave it here. So yeah. that way I have, so I've got Mystic Gate to go get double white if you need it. You can get it off of the expedition map. You can whir into it, for example, if you actually had to. But mainly whir is just in there because it's a way to treat the orb that's uncounterable. It's a way to tap the orb for a turn to get all your mana back. And your opponent can counter the whir, but they can't stop the cost of improvise. So they cannot prevent you from untapping all of your lands. And that can be very important at a certain point in the game. It's also a way to go get the orb, of course, as well as put together Crucible map, which we can now do since I just put the map back in. It's also a way to support. Whir also supports tax track a little bit more, so a lot of reasons to potentially run it. But also don't forget you can just whir for 0 and go get one of the Moxen or Jeweled Amulet. So an early whir can act like a end of turn rampant growth basically, which is what I like about it. I took out City of Traders to put in the Mystic Gate. And when I had what I was testing instead of whir was the red and 2 Chandra, the really good one. Um, and I put instead of Mystic Gate, I put Cascade Bluffs, which is a Mystic Gate for blue and red. Uh, I liked it, but the fact of the matter is, every time I never once, for all the times that I drew it and looked at it, I never once even attempted to play it. Double red was just too big of an ask, I think, for this deck. So even double white sometimes can be challenging, and this deck runs Tithe and has tons of white support. So, which is why I put the Mystic Gate in here. But I think at the end of the day, the Mystic Gate makes a lot more sense because we have Tithe and more ways to go get planes. A lot of ways to go get planes. We can convert like Plateau into a counter spell. If you have Plateau Mystic Gate, that's the same as having a Tundra and a Volcanic Island in terms of being able to cast Counterspell. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And then also, like I said, being able to just easily play one land and get 2 white so you can cast Palace Jailer is important as well. So it also smooths things out when you're trying to get Cryptic mana and you've got like a Signet and you've got like Signet Island, Ancient Tomb or something or whatever. So you went first turn Tomb, second turn Island, third turn Mystic Gate. Well, that'll get you. I guess that's not really much of an improvement. I guess any old blue source would do there, but anyhow, enough pontificating. Those are the current changes. I will play this some more tomorrow. We'll find out if they hold or if they do not. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.